Hello, everyone. This is Roman with Holistic Dog Training, and I'm excited to tell you a little bit about rabies, miasm, and aggression in dogs. And I really, I'm not looking forward to it. It's really disturbing, and unfortunately, in the later years, I can say that 6 out of 10 clients that I'm working with, usually we're talking about aggression and severe behaviors, are directly associated with rabies miasm. So, yeah. Hi, thanks for joining us today. And I know not many know about me. I'm a holistic dog trainer and behaviorist, and I specialize in severe behavior issues. And I'm 100% force free the last 15 years, I guess, 13 years. And I have dealt with very aggressive dogs, and I work still with clients internationally and in person and try to help families to get their dogs back to normalish, if we can call it. So, the reason why I want to talk about rabies today is because I see it very often. It's misinterpreted, people don't know about it, and um, yeah, we're gonna go deep tissue here. So, this is part one of two parts for now, depending on how far we get this time. I wanted to take the hit first, but I also have invited a couple of specialists, at least to our second part of the video, usually in the coming weekend, and we can talk about stuff. So, first of all, I would like to tell you that I here in Eugene, Oregon, and I'm wondering where you guys are watching from, so I get a better idea where we are broadcasting here. Tell me a little bit about yourself, where you're from, and about your dog, and if you have experienced rabies or rabies miasm or side effects of vaccinations, because I'm doing a project and I really want your feedback here. So let's get you guys started because we don't have so much time. We should be done by the end of this full hour. So be patient with me, and I'll just give you a heads up that just a clear notice here. We're gonna have some tough videos for you to watch, and I will tell you when I start. So don't worry about it. You can look away or take your headphones off, because at some point I would like you to see how rabies in dogs look like, so you understand the difference, but you also understand the connection, the direct connection between rabies, miasm, and your dog's behaviors connected to rabies. Okay. Now, I'm not a scientist and I'm not a veterinarian, so I'm basing this presentation on my personal experience and information that is out there available to me. But I promise you, on the next session, we're going to meet next week likely. I will have professionals from different fields, and we will kind of break it down in even more interesting pieces. Okay? So let's start with a video that I will show you right now that's available on the internet, and it's called Rabies in Dogs. Um, Let me share it with you here. Hold on, be patient. I'll have the audio on. Good. Okay. So in three, two, one, I'm gonna share it. So here's some symptoms that we look at. This is an old video, but it works. It's done in 2014.
And other mammals. Some of the most characteristic symptoms are the following. Many dogs develop a characteristic continuous howl that is neither barking nor baying. This often progresses to a hoarse, croup-like yowl. Aimlessly, fighting and biting anything it makes contact with. Movement and sound often elicit aggressive responses. The bone in the throat symptom is potentially extremely dangerous to pet owners and veterinarians because there's a temptation to dislodge the apparent obstruction. Direct saliva contact with open wounds is a potential source of transmission.
So the reason why this happens to this particular dog and the previous dog is because rabies does affect the way the throat works, and it paralyzes pieces of the voice system and the throat system. We see also inability to swallow because of this paralysis of the swallowing system.
Some animals, however, are able to drink and eat even in an advanced stage of the disease. Notice in this case the dog's response to flying insects.
Air snapping. The feeling of having fleas. Gagging. We're going to talk about all these details. I just want you to look at how it looks like. So if you have an animal with rabies, you
Restlessness is
recognize that.
consistently reported in all species and may be noted as aimless wandering and circling, pawing, scratching, digging, rubbing, licking, chewing, and depilation. Agitated, they circle, paddle, lie down, and stand up at frequent intervals. A weird, fixed glare. As the disease progresses, incoordination is nearly always seen. This may be followed in some animals by paresis, paralysis, coma, and death.
So I know it was very upsetting for you guys. Let's find any questions. So this is what rabies looks like and why we need vaccinations. It's important to have your dog protected. So this is not about anti-vaccines. It's about for you to understand what vaccines do, what rabies does, and how to protect you and your family of the side effects of rabies vaccine, because there are side effects. And we're going to talk about that. So let me get back to my screen sharing so we get things sorted out. Okay, so rabies miasm aggression in dogs. So aggression is in the conversation that we will have. You will not see any pictures. We're done with it, so you can screen back and watch the video. So the first thing I would like you to recognize that, let me get a hold on my screen here, is what we're going to talk about. Is about rabies. We did the first part. We talk about the vaccination, that is important. We talk about vaccine side effects and why they are harmful. And we have better understanding what the vaccine, vaccinosis, and miasma is, because you may have to deal with it already and you don't know about it. So what is rabies? Rabies is a preventable viral disease most often transmitted through the bite of a rabid animal. You may not see it. It can happen if your dog is in the backyard digging around or grabbing an animal that just passes by. And I know it looks weird, but that's how it looks like. It looks strange, right? The problem is that basically it attacks the dog's central nervous system and everything attached to it. But it's not only related to animals, to dogs, it also goes to all the mammals and, of course, to people as well. So, rabies vaccine, of course, rabies vaccine, no questions asked. It's extremely important for your dog to be protected. Puppies born with a female that has already rabies immunity and will last about a couple of weeks, maybe a month or two, but then the puppy is not really protected. So we want to make sure the puppy gets the rabies vaccine. However, if the vaccine comes in too early, it can destroy the immunity of your dog because there's a conflict between the existing immunity of the puppy and the vaccine that comes into the puppy to address the rabies immunity. So we don't know exactly why that happens, but it happens, and so we have to be very careful that we should vaccinate the puppy not too early, so we're not risking so much that interference between the vaccine and the natural immunity of the dog. So, when are side effects visible? And I know many veterinarians will turn their eyes back and they will tell you, that doesn't really exist, right? Yeah, okay, I understand. Because there is this idea that rabies, it either happens now or it doesn't happen at all. However, damage can be immediately or after months. And unfortunately, many veterinarians don't recognize that the damage is done beyond the time the dog leaves the clinic. And maybe a week later, or a month later, or a month or a year later. It really depends on the dog's own immune system and the dog's own body system and the dog's breed. We recognize that some breeds are more receptive to having rabies vaccine, rabies miasm than other dogs, and some dogs are more sensitive to the vaccinations than other dogs. So the next thing I want to look for is the symptoms. And here I'm quoting Dr. Richard Pitcairn. Clinically, you see certain symptoms. A miasm is a chronic disturbance, unrecognized except as it's manifested by acute flare ups of what seems to be individual disease. Now, what I see too, just like Richard does, is that after the vaccinations, usually dogs develop what we call rabies miasm, and they suddenly change behaviors. They are fine in the morning, and in the afternoon, they're going nuts. It's kind of like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Sometimes dogs get very sensitive. They hide themselves. You cannot touch them. In the morning, they're fine and cuddly. In the afternoon, they just hate for everything, right? Now, I also see many people who just get a dog from a shelter. The dog is being vaccinated at the shelter. Nothing comes up yet. And then suddenly the dog is fine for the couple of days or maybe a week or two. And then suddenly he starts roaming and trying to escape. And he hates the crate and he hates the being in the house. He tries to escape and all of a sudden starts tearing tears up. And usually what we behavior is considered is, yeah, of course the dog hasn't settled in yet. He hasn't created a bond yet. I would say eventually, yeah, you know what, your dog hasn't established a secure attachment relationship. Or you start forcing your dog in a crate, you shouldn't do that. Or your dog has separation anxiety because he's going through a trauma. So we try to explain things, and I learned my lesson, and I said, hold on, before we do these all explanations why this behavior, let's rule out at the beginning, maybe the dog has rabies miasma. The first thing we're going to do is search backwards in time and see the schedule. What was the timing the dog got into the rescue? Was the dog in a previous home before? Does the dog had a double vaccinations? Eventually, the dog was already vaccinated, but because the shelter doesn't do a data test, they naturally go automatically to do a rabies 10 days rabies hold, and the dog doesn't show any symptoms, then it's considered fine because it doesn't have rabies, obviously. And then, you know what, since the rescue steps in, the rescue would say, well, do the vaccinations, they will pick him up, or the rescue does the vaccinations after he picks up the dog from a rescue, and all of a sudden the vicious circle starts. And it's not that dogs have rabies, but they seem to express some symptoms of rabies. And so my personal idea of why it's happening is, I think and I believe that over these millions of generations of dogs going through their personal experiences, this information is being brought down to generations and generations. And we know that trauma and also rabies could be a medical trauma is being transmitted down to the generations up to 17. It can become a knowledge of the body how the symptom is. And even if the dog survives the rabies as a species, the information is stored in the DNA. And if the vaccine kicks in and the dog feels he has rabies vaccine, the rabies, but he doesn't really have the rabies, the body response goes to that level. Does it make sense? But that's my personal opinion. There is no scientific evidence behind that. But I kind of had that feeling, combining different informations I have, that that's likely the case. Why some dogs are more receptive to this disease than other dogs, even if they don't have that. So, first of all, we have to isolate three types of problems we have when we give the rabies vaccine. A, we have acute side effects, then we have chronic side effects, and then we have the miasm. To be more specific, an acute is a reaction that can happen immediately after the rabies vaccine, or within a day or two, or maybe a week. And what some veterinarians do, they give already the dog medication to counter react towards allergies that a dog may show. I'm not judging why they do that. Anyway, the other thing that can happen is a chronic. The disease in a dog can be triggered by the rabies vaccine, damaging, affecting their dog's immune system and neurological system. We're going to talk about that a little bit later when we go into details. And you're going to be surprised how much problems we have without actually knowing it. Does anyone have any questions so far? Good. Okay, let's go for it then. Then the next thing we're going to see here is we have the rabies miasm. So the rabies vaccinations can cause the body to mimic the disease that it was intended to prevent. Okay, so your dog does not have rabies, but the body thinks he has. So the symptoms will come up because they are in the body's system, kind of stored over the generations. So what is vaccinosis? Because many people will says, vaccinations can cause vaccinosis. Let's define that for a little bit, because this kind of interferes as well when we're dealing with behaviors, and we're dealing with illness of the dog that affects the dog's behavior. So vaccine-induced disease called vaccinosis is understood as a disturbance of the life force and of chi, the energy of the dog, of the patient, that may result in a mental, emotional, and physical changes. So the vaccine that comes in, and all these substances that are in the vaccine, do affect the dog's energetic field. But not only that, it also affects the mental, emotional, and physical change. And all of a sudden, we have the result of that, which is called vaccinosis. Now, let's talk about the problems the dog can get immediate, like the acute problems. So these acute reactions are necessarily limited to the rabies vaccine. It can also happen with any shots, which goes to the previous we saw about the vaccinosis. Vomiting, facial swelling, injection site swelling, and lump, lethargy, hives, circulatory shock, injection site pain. So that's why many veterinarians already give you some pain medication plus some allergy medication. And in worst case scenario, it happened, also can cause death, loss of consciousness, and diarrhea. Now, I would recommend, if you go to your veterinarian, let him explain to you in details what you should look for on your way home. Because it's not just you getting the shot and you leave home and suddenly your dog shows certain symptoms, and then you don't know the symptoms, you don't recognize the symptoms, and you're losing time where your dog can get help, and you don't know that. So the veterinarian is supposed to help you, even if that's a quick clinic, a low-cost spay, neutering, and vaccination clinic. You need to are informed what's going to happen. So if your dog has any issues to start with, like he has already allergies, he has already a problem with his health, then you need to talk to your veterinarian. And theoretically, I'm not saying it had to happen, theoretically the veterinarian can exempt your dog for not getting the vaccinations now, or do a titer test. We're going to talk about that next time. We're going to do a titer test so your dog shows the proof of immunity, so you don't have to revaccinate your dog. Now, that wasn't it. We have more of those. We have hypersensitivity and fever, anaphylaxis, ataxis, lameness, general signs of pain, hyperactivity, injection scab or crust, muscle tremor, seizures. Usually they come between 7 and 9 days, which is when the rabies antibodies develop, which means the dog in this time period starts creating these issues. Now, because you left the clinic And after leaving the clinic, obviously the field clinic is not responsible for anything that happens after that. The veterinary industry likely, or the vaccine industry, doesn't want you to associate that with that. So they said, well, you know what? If it didn't happen immediately, then it's not related to that, and end of the story. Like, after leaving our counter, we are not responsible for it. So tumors can happen, and this can happen within 72 hours. And I know of people, and I had clients in the past that were fine until, because then only vaccinated once when they were puppies, and then dog is like 6 or 7 years old, and then they have to go for vaccine for vacation, and they don't have any outlet, so they put the dog into a kennel, and the kennel wants them to do the vaccination. So they're kind of trapped, catch 22. You cannot leave for vacation. The dog has to stay somewhere, and wherever you want to stay, everybody wants proof of vaccinations. And because you maybe live in a state where you cannot have a titer test, you are forced to do the vaccinations, and you're coming back from vacation, so all of a sudden your dog doesn't feel well, and then a couple of months later down the road, you don't have a dog anymore. And I don't want to kind of make a drama out of it, but I just want you to know that these are possibilities. They are likely to happen. It's not it's unlikely to happen, it's likely to happen. Sudden behavior changes and sudden aggression, fear, increasingly fear of everything, the doorbell, car. Suddenly your dog was fine 1 week earlier, and a week later the dog starts being reactive to everything, and you're just thinking your dog is a jerk, or you kind of try to find excuse because the neighbor got a new motorcycle, or because the roofing, and we try to find all these excuses, but we don't suspect the real issue that likely is going to happen in the background because we just don't connect the dots yet. Okay, then we have also immune mediated hemolytic anemia. A disease can also become chronic. Now, and then we have the chronic problems. That's another story. Many chronic diseases in dogs can be triggered by the rabies vaccine, damaging, affecting your dog's immune system and neurological system. And it kind of comes slow in and then escalates very quickly. Okay, and all these things can happen. You can even speak to them correctly. So, forgive my English. So, fibrocarcinomas and other cancers, chronic digestive issues, and inflammatory bowel disease. Sometimes we blame the food and the quality of the food, which usually is also part of it. And chronic diarrhea. We have leaky guts coming in. We have inflammation, agitation of the rabies vaccines. We have seizures, epilepsy, and seizures can have different ways to show up. This is another story. We're gonna talk about that because I will have soon a specialist next time. We're gonna introduce her. And food and environmental and inhaled allergies. So yeah, we're gonna blame the vaccinations because we adopted the pup in spring, and the vaccination started in spring, and then a year later again spring we do another vaccinations because that's what we every year we do, right? And then we see that, oh, you know what, it's spring and there's allergies and we blame the allergies for it. But the reality is it's not really the allergies that happen from the environment, just the rabies vaccine started the whole event, or the vaccinosis started the whole event. The other thing that we see in chronic diseases is skin issues in different many types, hives, rashes, itchy wrist, and you're like blaming the treats or the chew bone that you give your dog because again you don't see those connections. Or sometimes you get abscesses in the ear and ear infections and allergland problems. Well, you know what? You go to the vet and they fix it. You go to the pet store or groomer, he's going to address that. But it's still happening, but we don't see it. Then we see muscle weakness and atrophy, including wasting disease like degenerative myopathy and Guillain-Barré, whatever, demyelation. And so we see that all of a sudden all these things happening, and if we don't connect the dots, we're going to losing that information, and we're treating the dog for the wrong thing without going to the tissue here. And then we have more of those. We have autoimmune diseases, and we have metabolic diseases like diabetic, Cushing's disease, Addison disease. How many people of you guys, your dog suddenly has Addison disease, and you're like, what the heck? What happened? All of a sudden, my dog was fine, and then he wasn't. I lost 3 clients of Addison disease, and it's definitely going back to that. That's why I'm saying, I know I'm not working with everyday clients. I'm working with people who have already issues, and that's why likely the percentage of 6 out of 10 seems high to you. But you know what? These people who don't have any problems, most of them have digestive issues, so they go with low protein diets or they go pumping the dogs off with medication, and they're forever clients on the veterinarian's office because we don't see those connections. And then we have the rabies miasm. Now that's a long story, so bear with me here. And if you guys are bored, we have another half an hour and we're done with it. But if you don't know all these details, and especially if you're a professional and you don't start from there, you may lose the dog. The dog becomes aggressive and you don't know about it. And you try to do whatever you know you have to do, and nothing works. And it's really not you, and it's really not your training system, and it's really not the people who don't follow your instructions, and it's really not the dog because he's a jerk, but it's something that no one of them had suspected. And here we are discussing it. So, usually, what we see is hypersensitivity for all senses, sensitivity to sound, movement, touch, and even light. I just had a conversation with a client yesterday, a rescue who's just being adopted, and all of a sudden, a dog is hiding in the basement. And then we ask the questions, when did this behavior start? Well, he was fine the first week, and then all of a sudden he started hiding and being upset about everything and fearful of everything. And then we found out that the dog, before he got into foster care, he got his rabies vaccine, and likely a double booster, because the previous home we didn't have any vet records, so we didn't know what happened because he was a stray dog. Rage, agitation, violence, ferocity, sudden attacks, unprovoked attacks. How many times do you look into Facebook and social media and see, oh, my dog was fine, and all of a sudden he attacks everyone. He attacks my kids, he attacks my cats, he attacks my dog, he attacks the neighbors, and you're like, yeah, you're a bad owner, blah, blah, blah. But the reality is, it's not really the dog's fault because nobody suspected it. Okay, so behavior you may expect to see in a dog infected with rabies is what we see, and you saw the video in the very beginning, right? And then you have inappropriate responses to water. Haha, did you know that rabies was previously called hydrophobia? Yeah, why? Because it's hydrophobia, which is another term of rabies, right? The dog hates water. You want to take your dog a shower, he's going to throw a tantrum, he's going to hurt you, he's going to bite you. He doesn't like to walk in the morning in the grass because it's moist. He doesn't want to get washed. He doesn't want to get his paw touched or cleaned because you want to have a sponge, washing his paws off because he's coming out from outside with a mess from your yard. And then suddenly we have obsessive compulsive behaviors: tail chasing, fly biting, chasing balls. Oh, your dog wants to chase balls? Let's go fetch a ball, right? You get his workout, and somebody told you need to fetch your dog because that helps a lot, right? Get his off his stress, and he's aggressive, and people tell you, well, do something with your dog, and here you are chasing balls with your dog, right? And you didn't know about it. And sometimes your dog's just chasing life effect. And then you blame your kids because obviously a couple of days ago they started playing with the laser light because the cat likes it and so the dog likes it too. Or the dog suddenly reacts to the mirrors or to your cell phone, right? You're playing with your cell phone and you're typing something and suddenly your dog attacks you and you don't know what happened. Well, a reflection of the light goes on the mirror, reflects on your phone, onto the dog, and up we go into the emergency room. The interesting part also, you see excessive focal licking and licking of genitalia. So focal licking means the dog just licks everything. He licks his carpet, he licks his bed. Sometimes it could be related to digestive issues. We're going back to, the vaccinosis issue, but usually it can also be related to rabies miasm or to a problem the dog has because he has a belly issue, and so he licks, try to get fiber in his belly. So since he doesn't get outside because you don't let him outside because outside he's eating grass all the time, he suddenly starts licking in the house. So we see there's so many things happening all the time. We just try to excuse and limit them from happening, but they do happen and they need to be addressed. So another thing that we see very often is we're going to the dog park. Well, yeah, my dog is now safe and immune because his all vaccinations are done, and now we're going to the dog park, and all of a sudden we see your dog is humping everyone, and you're like, oh, I knew it. People told me my dog gonna be dominant. I'm gonna go in and snip him because that's what fixed the problem. But in reality, it's not that. And so humping is excitement related behavior. Most likely, if you would call me and told me suddenly your dog will hump everyone, I would say, yeah, likely can happen. There are two ways of excitement. The one is excitement and being overwhelmed, so he's going into hopping, or he's going into biting, which is a sex drive or a hunting drive, which means I would not pay attention Or if I knew about it, I will tell you, hey, wait a minute. When was your last vet visit? What exactly did you guys do there? Okay. Okay, there was a booster. Oh, your doctor did a mess with the previous one, so you guys got a double booster to fix the previous problem. Okay, I gotcha. And all of a sudden, we know what we're talking about. And then all of a sudden, we have also constant unwanted directions, right? And you post it on Facebook, and everybody says, "Well, your dog is like he's his age of sex drive, so you're gonna snip him and be done with it rather now than later." And you do that, but nothing changes after that, and you just blame the breed, right? Because you have a dominant breed, and that's what dominant breed does, right? So the next thing we're gonna see here sometimes frequent and spasmodic sneezing, spasm in the jaws, choking, you saw the video before, or coughing. It's kind of like you had something in your throat, but because of the laryngeal area start being numb and having issues, the dog thinks kind of is choking. Involuntary urination, right? How many times you had a dog in your house and you suddenly he starts peeing all over the place, or you approach your dog and he pees when you're coming up, and you're like, "What was that? I thought he was potty trained, honey. What did you do to your dog?" Right? But in reality, it can be rabies miasm. Then the sensation of flea bites, and you're like, "Oh my god, I'm giving him flea preventative, and now he has fleas again. Let's put him in a shower and let's wash him." And all of a sudden, you have a tantrum coming up because, again, remember the dog is reactive to water, and now you get him being upset about it, and you bring him to the groomer. The groomer should deal with it. And the groomer what's gonna do? He's gonna put his choke collar on, put him on a table, and start washing him. And guess what's gonna happen? The dog will bite him. And why? It's because the dog doesn't like to be touched and around the neck. We're going to talk about that right later. Because the dog feels the need around his neck that he's being choked, right? And all of a sudden, you end up with your dog at the vet's office being euthanized because your dog is just aggressive, and you cannot deal with that. You have kids in your house. What you know, you just cannot take it. And even if you love your dog, that dog is going to kill your kids based on what you observed so far. And if you post it on Facebook or on social media, that's what people will tell you. Well, you're going to put your family at risk. Family first, yeah, but the dog is not family if he's behaving like a crazy animal, and you didn't know. Then restlessness, uneasiness, apprehensive, and developing aggressive behavior, especially towards strangers. Right? Yeah, and who you blame? You blame the dog for it. And if your normal affectionate dog may hide away and avoid company, well, why was that? Because you're a mean person? Or many would say, oh, dogs know better. Your boyfriend, yeah, your dog knows better about him, right? And you're like, did you do something to my dog? And he's like, no. Well, why else would he be like that? But we don't think of rabies miasm. We only think to blame people or dogs for certain behaviors. Or your normal independent dog may become unusually attentive and affectionate. And you're like, oh my God, he loves me so much. He licks me all day long. Haha. Remember, licking, obsessive behaviors, feeling affectionate, and feeling lost and disoriented. And that's why he becomes affectionate, because he just feels safe next to you, because he doesn't feel good. Desire to roam and travel away from home long distances. And I know you guys, most of you have guardian breeds or have protection breeds, and all of a sudden your dog starts digging himself out, right? Remember, he doesn't want to be contained, and at the same time, he likes to roam, right? And he takes down a dog next door, right? Because that's what happens. He becomes aggressive, and you don't see it coming, and nobody sees it coming. And you go to the vet and tells him that story, and it's like, oh, I have some medication here. You're gonna numb him down, and he will be a good dog. And you're like, oh, maybe I should double dose just in case. So then we have resistance of being restrained, chewing viciously on leashes, metal chains, your crate, your house, your doorsteps, everything. Nothing is safe. He even bites himself, inflicting severe bite wounds. Right? He attacks the next dog next to him. Why? Because he dared to bark to the next guy, and that sound overwhelming his brain and overwhelmed with the stress going on, he just viciously attacked. We call it like, oh, I know, redirected aggression. No, it could be rabies miasm. And of course, your dog has no interest in food. Why would he, right? He's stressed all day long. You're leaving the house. But he's hungry. and he cannot eat. Now he shows resource guarding, right? Stupid dog, he growled at you because you picked up a bone and you didn't know. And sometimes he's unable to swallow, so he wants to eat, but he cannot swallow. So he's basically starving. And of course, he's going to show aggressive behavior. You're approaching him, growing to his bowl, because that dog is in survival mode. And then the other thing that I saw the first time, I didn't know about that, but I was very fortunate to meet Dr. John Robb. So, Dr. John Robb, some of you may know him already, is a veterinarian. He's in Connecticut, was in Connecticut, and he was employed by Banfield Clinic. And I was a client of Banfield Clinic because I was working with rescue. I had 13 rescues in my house. And of course, I wanted to go inexpensive. You know, you go to the vet visit, you're going to pay $100 just for the visit. And I have every of my dog on a plan at Banfield Clinic. Cool, right? Smart. But when I wanted to go to the clinic, all of a sudden, all these people telling me, "Oh, you need to vaccinate your dog, and he has to do this, and you have to do that." I was like, "What are you talking about? He's fine. He's not exposed to anything." And they start telling me this guilt trip, how irresponsible I am and how bad person I am, and I was like, "You're talking to the wrong guy here." I care for dogs for living more than you do. However, you know what? Let me talk to the doctor about it. And voila, Dr. John Robb showed up and he's like, okay. So, yeah, I think we should exempt him. I think we should exempt this one. He doesn't have to do that. And my dog, the particular one I'm talking about, was Ziggy, a three legged pit. He was so aggressive. And now I know why. Back then, I didn't know back then. He was so aggressive, he had to be fed in a kennel through a drawer. Okay? You couldn't let him out at the shelter. So when I ended up with that dog, I was invited to work with that dog. Everybody was looking at me like I'm a crazy person. Like, are you really working with that dog? I was like, yep, I guess I do so. And he's like, okay, so where's your bite suit? And I was like, is he so bad? And the people are like, you have no clue how bad he is. So we walked through all these past cages and we went through the red door. Says only specific personnel can go there with a key. He was the only dog left in that kennel run, isolated from everybody else because he was just not anywhere. His kennel bended. You remember those kennels in the facility? They are like steel that were bended, and he was a mess. And he had only three legs. Only few people could took him out, and I was lucky to work with him. I didn't know back then, but I was happy because I met a doctor who helped me going through this process and make me aware of, hey, your dog may have an issue. Maybe we should not vaccinate him right now. But I didn't listen to my vet. I supposed to ask more questions, and I had to board him. And the boarding facility told me that it was a vet boarding, and it told me, if your dog is not up to date, we cannot take him. So basically, without asking me, they assumed I agreed with it, I guess, and so they vaccinated him for rabies because I didn't have a rabies vaccine. And guess what I got back when I came back? A dog who was not right in the brain. He was a white dog, like light fawn dog, and his eyes were black, like there was nobody in there. You know how sometimes like, hello, is anybody in there kind of thing? He was not my dog. And I was like, shit, what happened to my dog? I should not have left him in the kennel. I didn't click. And then when I got the paperwork, I went to the paperwork to see if there's any notes. I saw like, wait a minute, he got vaccinated. So I called up the vet. I was like, what is that? Well, he wasn't vaccinated and we couldn't get a hold of you, so we vaccinated him. Okay, then we have to deal with it. So I had to search for help because my dog happened exactly what I wanted to avoid. And I didn't know better. So I reached out to Dr. Goldstein, and he helped me get him to a plan. So he's helping him detox, right? And helping get healthy about that stuff. And I got my healthy dog back. Took me a year with this behavior he has. While I was dealing with severe aggression, while I was having a whole community watching over me because that dog was basically the first dog at Hampstead Animal Shelter to be a non-kill dog. And I was a lucky one, right? and all these things I didn't know, like you didn't know. How many of you knew about all these things? Did you know about it? Have you seen certain behaviors that we talked about and you're like, oh my God, my dog does this? So if your dog does more than four of those issues that we talked about, then we likely are suspicious about it. So I know we had a lot of questions and we will answer them right now. So I just give you a heads up. The next discussion, likely next week, same time, we're going to talk about how we can help your dog, how we can help your family, how can we avoid over vaccinations, and how we can do a holistic treatment plan. And even if you are a person, who has a dog and you love your dog and you have issues and you see the issues now, you don't need to wait until next week. You can message me, you can reach out to me to holisticdogtraining.org and reach out from there. Or if you don't have any severe issues and you want to wait until next time, that's fine too. I will have professionals on board to help you understand what exactly you can do and how you can help. Individually, dog, we have to see dogs are individuals. So we cannot say, oh, you take this and you take that and you take this and you're done. Ta 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 ta, right? No, it sounds interesting, but it's not going to work like that because we have to see the individual symptoms, we have to see all the varieties of symptoms, and then we have to create a hierarchy of those symptoms so we can start treating one thing after the other without having conflicts. Because while your dog is going through this treatment plan, your dog should be also treated technically through behavior modification program. So all these things have to come in as an organized system and not just as one system. Okay, I see already some questions coming in. You're welcome. Yep. Ziggy, you remember Ziggy? Who remembers Ziggy? That's a good question. We're gonna solve that problem too, because here's what's happening. Um, I used to work with the medical industry as a packaging engineer, and we know from human treatment that a good client is a sick client. So I'm not shooting out of there. Okay. I'm just saying it's very suspicious that we agree upon to those lobbying for the over vaccination and we make rabies or vaccines titer testing so expensive, right? Because imagine you know that your dog is immune and science already shows that that immunity can last up to 7 to 11 years. Oops, I said it. How many times would you go for vaccinations? How many vet visits will go off the chart? Well, how many million dogs are out there? Imagine all those million dogs don't go to the vet to get their yearly vaccines and all the side effects and all those after treatments of based on the side effects that's going to happen. Are you seriously going to ruin the whole industry? No. You got to stick to the plan, right? Perpetuating the system until you say, hell no, I have choices. I can make informed decisions. I'm not an anti vaxxer because I know vaccinations will help. Oh, by the way, I have a visitor, Brenda. Hi, Brenda. I totally missed you here because I was so dedicated in my presentation. Can you hear me, Brenda? Good. Yep, for now. Some other thing, very good. Thank you so much. Patty, for example, I would like you to click on that. We're going to talk about these details next time. This is how you can find a vet in your area to get proper protection. And Here another one. Good question. What can I do when rabies vaccine is required in my state with no exemptions? Good question. We're going to answer that question next week. Okay? We're going to talk about the whole thing. We're going to see what we can do, how we can help you, how we can help your dog, right? Yes, these are all fees, right? Um, yep, I agree. So, yes, Patty. So, Patty is a good example of somebody who steps up for our animals and says, you know what? I'm not taking that. I want to make a difference. I'm going to organize and try to change those rabies vaccinations systems that are out there. Back in time, it was like every 3 years, and suddenly it's every year. Why exactly? There is no scientific evidence that tells you you have to do it every year. So who said that? Well, the industry said that because the industry had lobbyists. They get millions of dollars to lobby and push buttons and have people making decisions. Interesting, right? But those decisions are not made for the dog's best interest. It's for the money interest. Am I going after the medical industry? No. Why would I? I don't care, right? But I want people to know about stuff. And what Patty does is she's working, try to support the titer testing to change the rabies law. There are three bill plans. And what we're working on right now is to collect information. I'm going to have to create all these clients that I work with, take permissions to share their experience and see that happened, then this happened, then we did that, and we addressed it. And try to connect the dots. So, for you guys, we're going to post those in the comments above. Thank you, Patty, for sharing. And next time, I want you on board. So, we're going to have many people here, and Brenda will be here too. And we can talk about things because I want you to make informed decisions, right? And I know many people will, you know, attack me about that, but I have the right to share my information and prove me wrong. And I know many veterinarians will say, yeah, rabies miasm, there is no scientific evidence. Really? There is no scientific evidence. I'm not here to educate you because veterinarians are scientists at some point. They are professionals. They should know and they should educate themselves. I did, and I made my own informed decision. And it's very clear if you open up a box. I'm taking here a symbolic. If you open those instructions and you read through them, you're going to read fine print. The dog's supposed to be healthy. Well, my dog is not healthy. Right? My dog is not healthy. Now, why are you pushing me to that extent? Why should I go that risk to double vaccinate and over vaccinate? Because somebody who wants to make money said so, while the science says my dog, if I do a titer test, unless you want to rob me about the money, because you're going to make my titer test so expensive that I double think about it. Why would I spend $400 to do a titer test if the vaccines cost like a couple of dollars? Sometimes I get it for free. No, the titer has to be for free, and the vaccination should cost. Why? Because the industry has to make money. You cannot just cut the money off of these people, right? But I don't want to pay out of my pocket for them to make the money. If people want to do that, then they should pay for it. It's a bonus, right? Having your dog double vaccinated as if over immunity will make him more immune than he already is. Like washing yourself 15 times makes you cleaner than washing yourself 3 times. I don't know. Anyway, that's what I wanted to share with you. Now, if you're struggling with your dog and have behavior issues, you have to be very careful to do the proper assessment. Don't blame your dog for his behavior. Don't make quick assumptions like I did. How easy we went to says, ah, yeah, it's allergies. Ah, yeah, it's being a jerk. Oh, he hates people. Oh, the neighbor were aggressive. Oh, he's afraid of kids. And we have all these excuses. And the dog is just a victim. He's a medical victim. And we didn't know about it. So before you go quick buying a shock collar, buying a prong collar, buying a choke collar, buying a spray bottle, and a ultrasonic correction device because it's cheap, maybe you should think twice about it and says, am I really punishing my dog for being punished? He is trying to survive here, and we don't see it. And I get goosebumps when I say that because I was the one person in the past who had no clue. And I was telling people, do this, and the people did it, and it didn't work. I blamed them. I did things, and the dog didn't do it. It's blame the dog. Now I know better. Now I know who to blame. No, I'm not blaming anyone. I want you just to be aware of things, right? So please share that video. Good question. Tricky question. Since the dog has issues with his environment, had issues being confined, does the muzzle help? Yes, it protects the dog, right? And I know many veterinarians who are not fear free certified or don't understand behaviors because only they learn other than that. Um, they don't know how to protect the dogs, especially now through COVID, where dogs are being left alone to go to the vet without the parent being parent. So the dog gets already stressed in the environment. He gets already overwhelmed. All this stress, the whole thing collapses. The dog goes into this vicious disturbance in here. Your dog will be in survival response and he will bite. And the place that's supposed to protect your dog is going to tell you to put your dog down because of his aggression, because his aggression was severe. We tried to restrain him. Ring the bell. A dog restraining having issues. We're trying to inject him. The dog knows I don't feel well after that. The people want to confine him, to hold him down, to do the vaccinations. Now the dog resists to that because the dog had already trauma from a previous time. A muzzle will save his life. Now, do we just take the dog and put the muzzle on? No, you don't. You have to create a training protocol. We're going to talk about next time how to set your dog up for success and how to help your dog recover without putting your dog or everybody else in danger. Because the vet doesn't see it coming. The vet tech doesn't see it coming. The boarding facilities doesn't see it coming. You didn't see it coming. The trainer didn't see it coming because we didn't suspect it. Now, anytime we see something weird, let's make sure we don't have that issue. Prove me wrong. Prove me that what you're saying doesn't really exist on my dog. I'm all with you. But until then, make sure I'm wrong. That's what I'm telling you. So, muzzle, yes. Right? Crate training, yes. It will help your dog not going nuts in the kennel, not shutting down at the groomer. And kennel is kind of a US thing. In Europe, it's not like that. In some groomer places, the dog have a playpen. They can play around for free, until it's their turn, right? Until you pick them up. So we're going to talk about that next week. So I appreciate you guys joining here. Thank you so much for the questions. Um, thank you for sharing, and thank you for supporting me here. And thank you for helping other dogs too, because your contribution, your sharing of information, okay, is helpful. Now, I decided in my questionnaire, if anybody starts working with me at some point, you will find, if you do the first initial behavior assessment, it's about an hour long. You can find it on my website. It's called Behavior Evaluation. Um, I have a whole section. You have to check each thing out that you saw your dog behaving a certain way. And if we see more than four, we're going to implement already the counter treatment to start with, right? And from there, you're going to go to the healing journey. So while many people would tell you your dog has to be corrected, I'm telling you, your dog needs to be healed. That's holistic dog training. We heal behaviors, we're not correcting them. We find the source all the way to the end of the route, the last final straw. We're going to find that, and we've got to go reverse and heal all the way up into your relationship. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.